Welcome to a new update. It is Bitcoin time. We are seeing a new yearly high. It is finally the period where we have been waiting for, in which we are looking for the upside. We are expecting the upside. We're seeing the upside. And usually the upside goes in a way that it's leaving many people behind. In the fact that we have been running from 26k to 35k in just a matter of days. I've been shooting this video last night, so we could be trading at 33 or 37k at this point as the volatility is going through the roof. But we're getting towards the end stage of the volatility, for now at least, because it's quite clear that we're going to get an ETF. But in this update, I'll be looking at what next and what should you do if you were expecting more downside to come on the market. What are important levels to look at? Those are all things that we're going to cover, and we're going to cover the news related items. We're going to cover the gold price, dollar, everything that is important for the price of Bitcoin, because nowadays it is moving like a very specific asset, just like gold is doing. So everything that's happening on the geopolitical side is important for Bitcoin. Before we continue, make sure to check out the Crypto 101 course. The course is having a discount of 100 euros. It is the Kickstarter for you. It is more than 7 hours of content, providing you with all the knowledge you need to get started in the markets. Also, we are starting with a consultancy and asset management on November 1st. I'm also going to give you trading consultancies if you would like to. Anyway, if you want to be interested with that, our portfolios have been doing between 15 to 25% since September 1st. Make sure to send an email to the email that you can find in the description beneath. And finally, this video is sponsored by Bybit, which is giving you the chance to win an iPhone 15 Pro, an iPad, or other prizes if you sign up through my affiliate. You don't need to do that, but if you are in the Netherlands, you can still trade futures on Bybit if you sign up through my affiliate, and you can start trading, which at this point I think is a lot more fun than when the markets are going down. Now, when we're looking at the markets, there are several things we should be considering, and I'm definitely keen to start looking at the higher time frames at this point, because I've been making this scenario previously in which I said, hey, perhaps we're going to have a big squeeze to the upside before we're going to have a correction. And the fact that we're seeing it is because we have been testing this resistance for multiple times. We have been sweeping the EMA 200 on the weekly a few times still. We held it and we start to crack the crucial resistance at 28.8. And that was actually fueled by additional power, which is by additional news, as Grayscale and SEC has to consider the application of Grayscale to reform the entire trust that they have towards an ETF, which is technically saying that they have to approve it. Second, Ripple has won the case, of course. Then we've got the news that BlackRock is currently feeding the ETF, which means if you start an ETF, you need, at the start of the launch of the ETF, you need to have a collateral, which is you need to buy Bitcoin in this case, because the spot ETF has to have the actual asset as underlying collateral. In this case, I think it's somewhere between 20 to 40% needs to be covered by the actual asset. And as we know, the chances are going to be increasing over time. We're actually quite sure at 99% at this point that we're going to get it, which means that all these parties need to buy the asset to actually be reliable at the start of having Bitcoin as collateral. The strength of the entire hype is being fueled at this point because the SEC is in contact with other parties to give comments. So they are able to provide a valuable application for the ETF. So they are working together to make sure that they can actually approve all those ETFs. So it's not a question of if we're going to get it, but we're seeing a question of when we're going to get it. Which brings me to the fact that right now we see the price starting to rally. So there are big buyers stepping into the markets. The sentiment is changing. A ton of people were still sidelined, so they are jumping on the bandwagon too. Shorts are getting liquidated, and that's why you see the fuel right now prior to the actual Bitcoin halving, prior to the ETF spot ETF. At this point, I consider the fact that we should be continuing the actual uptrend, and that actually the launch of the ETF is going to provide a short-term bearish response, because the actual buying has already been taken into account, and you probably those parties already know that they are going to get an approval, hence why they are buying the actual asset. So 2 events are going to take place within 6 months from now, the Bitcoin halving and the spot ETFs. And the spot ETF and the pre-halving run are probably going to be together, hence why I suspect that this run is going to be significant, and hence why I supposed to see that after that we're going to have some sort of correction, consolidation, before the continuation of the bull cycle takes place later in 2024. Despite the fact that we are having these events, I think that breaking 30k is an essential case. So at this point, we broke this resistance. We're going to look at the lower time frames, but if you are currently not into Bitcoin's position, I think you've had approximately 18 months to buy cheap Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is still very cheap. I think we're going to have such a cycle at this point, which means that we are anywhere in this range. So there's still a lot of time before we start to see a new all-time high. But altcoins are already waking up, and probably they continue to do so. Anyway, if we continue to stay above these levels of 30k to 29k, I think we continue. So what should you be doing if you're interested into getting into Bitcoin is, it sounds weird, but just wait for a correction. And that could be meaning that if you are going to be waiting for a correction, it could mean that you buy on the exact same level as you do right now. But you are going to have more conviction in the actual buy, because Bitcoin corrects by 20 to 30%. And in a bull cycle, it is always the best to buy those dips. If you look at the historical perspective right now, we have been dropping from 25 to 19.5, 20%. We have been dropping from 31 to 25, 20%. We have been dropping from 31 to 24, also 20%. So if we want to see it hold at 31.8, I think 40k is a very clean level where we're going to top out. Perhaps we're going to go higher. If we go higher, I don't suspect us to see 32k again, but then still you have the 20 to 30% correction, which always happens. So at this point, you are unsure whether this is actual breakout of the 31k level, but once time starts to pass and Bitcoin starts to rally up, you get more conviction, and then you can start getting a more of a clean thesis of actually buying such a correction. Because if there is something happening in the markets and we correct back beneath 31k, I think you should be aware of the fact that there is more downside to come. So it is a good breakout, but there is still more arguments needed to actually conclude that we're getting into the bull cycle, which I think we are, but still. Now, we've been holding this level, which is great, and now we're looking at the lower time frames. I think I need to get another chart. I think if we're looking at the daily time frame at this point, what we are seeing is we've got the 38k. We broke above the 31.8k to 31k. I think technically we can still go to 30, but lower you don't really want to see. We are also making higher lows, so that's great. We've not been making a lower low here. So since the Bitcoin bear market ended, we are making higher lows. So technically speaking, if we are still above 26.5, we are fine. But at this point, it's a little bit overexhausted. So probably we're going to have any of these cases here, which through me, I think the assumption of having some retests could be, but I'm not sure. All right. So I think anyway, at this point, we are seeing upside. We are seeing a case of a very overextended upside. So the volatility is increasing. Which we've also been seeing in January, and I think this entire move is comparable to January, which means that altcoins are most likely heavily going to continue. Anyway, we need to define a range. So if we are having this correction, I think you should be buying this. If we are reaching towards 38k, perhaps even higher to 45k, I think anywhere in this range is the time to start taking massive profits, because probably we'll be having a correction taking place. When we're looking at the lower time frames, it's just choppy waters. If we drop beneath these wicks here or get there, that's an entry point. If we break these, probably TP time, because then we're going towards here. At this point, it's just choppy. The big move is in. The largest upside is in too. There's downside risk at this point. So it's not time to take big positions at this point, unless you're scalping, of course. But if you're an investor, I think you should be looking at those lower boundaries, or you should be looking at more conviction in the markets. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another update. I hope you have been enjoying this one, and I'll see you again soon when the markets are again going to be volatile. Ciao.